It's another edition of The Reset. We are back and a lot to go over. Brady Henderson, he covers the Seahawks for ESPN. He joins us. Let's go.
It's The Reset with G. Scott.
I got my road dog here with me today. Kat Stokes is rocking with me. What's up, Kat? We good?
What up?
Oh,
We
come
great.
on.
We
We about to
great.
get it down. And then we got somebody else who in with us today. He covers the Seahawks for ESPN. A good friend of mine, Mr. Brady Henderson. Brady, thank you for being here, brother.
Well, thanks for having me, G.
All right. Well, first, look, there's a lot to talk about. There's been a lot in the news for the Seahawks. But the first thing that I want to kind of go over is I want to talk about Geno Smith and DK Metcalf. Why didn't it work out here? I did not expect for the Seahawks to not be together with Geno and DK this season coming up, but it didn't work. Traded to the Raiders, traded to the Steelers. What happened?
I think they expected at least DK to be there this season. Two kind of different situations, but both similar in the sense that there was some unhappiness there. And we'll start with DK. I mean, they planned on DK being with this team next season. And then I think what happened was it became clear over a series of conversations between the team and DK that he wanted out. And so I think between the fact that, they were probably going to have to pay him a ton of money. You saw the contract that he got with Pittsburgh, $35 million per year. Mm-hmm. So a big number, which would be a third contract. So in addition to the inherent risk in that, they were also dealing with a player who was unhappy and clearly wanted out. And from what I understand, maybe you've heard the same thing, he's been unhappy for a while. And he was unhappy early in his last contract, which suggests that the unhappiness was not totally money related. So, sometimes when a player is unhappy, a team can throw money at the problem and that solves it. But in this case, I don't know if that necessarily would have solved his unhappiness. So you had a big contract that was due and a player who didn't really want to be there, and paying him wouldn't necessarily have fixed that.
Staying with DK, I'm confused, though. I'm confused. Okay, I'm not confused on the unhappiness, but I'm confused on to the I heard that I want to go to a situation where the quarterback has stability, and two, I want to go to a place with warm weather. He's in Pittsburgh, and right now they don't know who their quarterback is.
Right, yeah, and we never necessarily heard that come from DK. So the warm weather stuff, I'm not sure about that. But at any rate, I think that there was, it wasn't as simple as DK going to a place where he wanted to go. I don't think that Pittsburgh was by any means his first choice. In fact, I heard that the places he wanted to go were either Houston or the Chargers. Oh. So those would be warm weather situations. But, it's kind of it was sort of a three-part negotiation, right? There's the Seahawks negotiating with other teams in terms of trade compensation. Then there's also DK Metcalf negotiating with those teams on an extension. And so it wasn't necessarily either the Seahawks trading him to exactly where they wanted to put him, based on the team that would give them the most in return. It also wasn't necessarily DK going to the place he wanted. It was kind of the best mixture of both of those things because, no team would be willing to give up a super high draft pick for DK if they didn't feel like they could sign him to an extension. So it was kind of a complex situation that they sort of had to find the best of both worlds, and that ended up being in Pittsburgh. But by no means do I think Pittsburgh was his first choice.
Kat, DK was on with Mike Robb and Marshawn Lynch on their podcast, Get Got. Right? Yeah. And I was able to see a little bit of it, and there are some quotes in there that I really want you to respond to. Number one, the biggest one, he gave and talked about how at the very end he says, the grass is greener on the other side. Ooh. Your thoughts on that?
I'm thinking just to the point that you made about just not being happy here. So, I always want to think the best about him. He did get engaged with that new signing. So there could be personal things in his life that he was like, Seattle's not for everybody. Maybe it was the environment. Maybe it was the locker room. I did remember they started calling him OG in the locker room, and he was not a fan of that. Right. So, that could have been part of the reason where he was like, nah, I want something different. And the grass, I don't know. When it comes to skill and when it comes to like the team, though, like you go into a team where we still don't know your quarterback. And you a lethal receiver. So I don't know about the grass being greener about team-wise, but maybe it's just an environment shift.
But no, you know me and analogies. It reminds me of somebody getting out of a relationship, getting into a new relationship, and really we looking at the person that they're with like, we ain't feeling it. However, we see them smiling and happy. Do you see the happiness on DK? Have y'all seen how happy my man looks? When the last time you seen him smile that damn much in the press conference? Come on now. It's crazy. Now, back to you, Brady, when it comes to Geno. Let's slide over to there. I thought a deal would get done. I thought that Geno would be the starting quarterback this season coming up. I thought, around 35-ish million maybe per season. What happened there?
Yeah, I think you were spot on the number, because from what I understand, that is the number that at least their initial offer was. My understanding, it was a 2-year, $70 million extension, so $35 million per year, and it would have paid him $40 million in year one. So that was the contract they offered him, and he didn't want to play ball with them, from what I understand. He was not willing to engage in negotiations, and basically told them that, he's not going to take that deal. So that's what I understand. Now, what the Seahawks have said is that, they thought that Geno wasn't willing to have a discussion. He wasn't willing to engage in negotiations, and they quickly pivoted to plan B, which was free agency. And knowing that, not all some negotiations don't go well. I think they had a contingency plan in place, which was they were going to, look at other quarterbacks in free agency, Sam Darnold being at the top of that list. And they're saying, they pivoted to Sam Darnold because they didn't want to miss out on, alternatives in free agency. And they traded Geno when they did. They sort of moved quickly there because they didn't want to miss out on alternatives in free agency. So that's true. I think it's also true that if they felt, stronger about Geno Smith, they would have waited, and they would have waited him out, and they would have found a way to get that deal done. So what really happened, I think, is twofold. Is they didn't want to miss out on alternatives, but they also knew that there was only going to be so far that they were so high that they were willing to go in order to extend Geno. And I think the fair way to characterize this is that they have been lukewarm on Geno Smith and his viability as their long-term starter for a while. And they were going to offer him what they thought was a fair extension, and they were going to be willing to walk away if he didn't want to play ball with them. And so I think the fascinating part of this story is that if Pete Carroll had not come back to the NFL, I think Geno Smith would still be with the Seahawks, because the Raiders gave the Seahawks an out, and the Seahawks took it.
That was a fire point
like,
that you just made.
Fire in the booth.
If
Fire in the
Pete
booth.
Carroll does not come back to the NFL,
That's real.
Geno Smith is the starting quarterback, and I have believed that, so I love how you put that right there. Now, one thing that stands out to me, Kat, is this. Geno has been traded, traded to the Raiders, and Pete and them was like, yes, we believe in him.
Yeah.
But guess what I ain't seen yet? I ain't seen a contract yet.
No.
Brady, what's going on with the contract? It hasn't got done.
Show us the money.
Show me the money. Show the Quan.
Yeah, there was a report. I'm not sure how accurate it was, that they had, the Raiders planned to give him a new contract, but we haven't seen that yet. I would have thought that if there was a new contract, it would have happened before March 16th. That's when he had a roster bonus due. So typically roster bonuses serve as kind of soft deadlines to get something done, not necessarily hard deadlines though. But yeah, I think, the Seahawks were willing to offer him $35 million per year. Now, keep in mind, that was the initial offer, as we all know. In any sort of negotiation, there's the initial offer, and then, a lot of times you sort of meet in the middle between, what both sides want. I think that he was probably up in the 40s in terms of what he wanted. And I'm not sure kind of what would have happened if they would have continued to negotiate, but I imagine that it could have easily ended somewhere in the low 40s. I don't know exactly what that number is, but I would imagine that if there is a Geno deal done in Vegas, that it's probably going to start with a 4.
Okay. Was there any way possible that Tyler Lockett could have stayed here in Seattle? Because DK made some interesting comments, and I want you guys to hear this.
Yeah.
DK, again, was on the Get Got podcast, and he was on there with Marshawn Lynch and Mike Robb. And by the way, he looked happy. He looked real happy.
Happy.
But he said something interesting. He said he talked about yelling at the offensive coordinator, Ryan Grubb, during the 49ers game as an example of feeling like an outsider, talking about the change that's going on in Seattle. He also talked about how hard it was watching Tyler Lockett's role being diminished. I want to talk about that because obviously he's bringing it up. But Tyler, was there any possibility of keeping him here in Seattle?
I don't think it was ever really likely. And I think, frankly, kind of what you're getting at here maybe is that as much as this has been viewed from the Seahawks lens of, hey, you got a 30-plus-year-old player making a lot of money, there's no way he was going to be back on his current contract. It's always been viewed from the Seahawks angle. I think Tyler, as much as I'm sure he's loved his time here in Seattle for the most part, I kind of have gotten the sense that he was willing to move on too, just based on the way that last season went. I think that Tyler Lockett has a lot more left in the tank than what his numbers last season showed.
Agree.
I think that part of his numbers last year in the production were just the way that kind of the offense was designed. And a lot of it went through Jackson Smith and Jigba, or rightfully so. He's your guy, and he's a fantastic receiver. But I think that there's more production to be had out of Tyler Lockett than what you saw last season. And the two places that I've had in mind, and we haven't seen any real news on where he's going to end up, but the two possible landing spots I've always had in mind, and I think you and I see eye to eye on this, are Dallas and Kansas City, just because he's got kind of both would offer.
He got some family in Kansas City.
He does.
You know what I'm saying?
Right. Dad lives in Kansas City. His brother plays at K-State. I believe he lives in Texas in the off season. He's got his real estate license there. There's the Brian Schottenheimer connection there. So I always kind of thought that they could have agreed to another pay cut, but never really seemed likely to me.
Kat, what the chat saying? By the way, make sure you comment and share this live right now. If you got some comments, go ahead and put it in the chat. We would love to answer any of the questions that you got, because Kat is in charge of the chat.
Yeah, talk to us. I'm still waiting for them to start talking to us. So we're waiting on it.
So I want to get into. There's been moves being made, obviously a lot. Sam Darnold, we kind of covered that a little bit. But I do want to talk about the interesting signings. I want to really get, because I think that after all of the excitement, DeMarcus Lawrence, Cooper Kupp, okay, excitement. Now let's dig into it. Let's dig into what this means. Let's start off with Cooper Kupp. There's a lot of people that says Cooper Kupp has made his living in the slot, right? Whereas JSN made his living in the slot.
Yeah.
So let's talk about that and the money, the contract. We can break down the contract that he got. We can break down what does this mean for Cooper Kupp in Seattle.
Yeah, well, in terms of the contract, we've still got to see the full details of that. It was reported as a 3-year, $45 million contract. As we all know, the initially reported details that come out sometimes are a little bit inflated, if you will, just because that figure might include incentives, and the more accurate picture of the contract may be a little bit lower than that. So we'll see what the details say. But the thing about Cooper Kupp is he has really had some hard injury luck over the last 3 seasons. Remember that 2021 season, he was the best receiver in football, won the Triple Crown, most receiving yards, most catches, 16 touchdowns, and he's had a rough go of it injury-wise since then. I think he's only played in 33 games. But even then, the production has still been there in terms of I think he's averaged over 700 yards despite, averaging only 11 games in the past 3 seasons. So for the time he's been out there, he's still been a productive player. It is interesting to see how they'll make it work with him and JSN. The point that Kupp made the other day when we talked to him for the first time at his introductory press conference was he has technically mostly been in the slot, but a lot of those routes that he's ran, he's been sort of on the outside, and it gets a little convoluted in terms of whether or not that counts as being a slot receiver. But the bottom line is that is his skill set. He's never really been an outside speed guy, but I think he's crafty enough and versatile enough to where a good offensive coordinator can find a way to make it work with both those guys.
Kat, did you notice that Cooper Kupp understood the assignment at his press conference the same way Sam Darnold pulled up in the flannel? Now, Now, Kat, come on now. You and I both know, never in the history of Seahawks history has back-to-back folks pulled up in a flannel.
In a flannel, and he had the Pearl Jam on under. Whew.
And the Pearl Jam concert that he was wearing,
Yeah.
my boy wasn't even born. so he knew the reset was going to talk about the wardrobe, and he's like, you know what, Sam Darnold,
Yep.
or as you say, hey Darnold.
Hey, Darnold.
He pulled up in the flannel. I'm gonna pull up in the Pearl Jam.
Yeah, I mean, he's happy to be here, and I think it's a wise move coming back. You know, when you get the city on your back, and like it's much, like him and Sam. Let me go to Sam Darnold. I think Sam Darnold may have a much easier time winning the hearts of the 12s. If he comes out popping and winning games, he's gonna have a way easier time winning the hearts of the 12s than Geno ever did.
Yeah, wait, but Geno's your guy. What you mean?
I love Geno. But if I'm being candid and honest,
think Geno, you don't think Geno won the hearts of Seattle?
I think half. I don't think about all.
Oh, that's interesting.
I mean, that's just my opinion. That's not. That's just me speculating.
Right.
But I saw way more like I don't believe in Geno, and like there's hesitance around Sam Darnold, but a lot of people like him. A lot of people really like him.
Geno became very polarizing, didn't he?
Yes.
Now I got to say, I'm not in the stands, and I'm not like having a bunch of conversations with Seahawks fans. So
I
okay, you are.
I was like, that's
so
right. I'm talking to Bill. I'm like, what you think?
Okay, so I point that out to say my only real frame of reference here is what I see on Twitter, and I just for every comment about how Geno is great, there's a comment about how the Seahawks need to replace him, and it just seems like anecdotally like a fairly even split in terms of fans who really supported him and fans who didn't think that highly of him. And it's just some player. I mean, it's wild, but that is the case with some players. They just, for whatever reason, become very polarizing.
If you're listening right now, have you ever taken a pay cut at your job? Or right now, would you take a pay cut at your job to stay there? Or would you be like, oh, let me go? And I'm bringing this up, y'all, because somebody just took a pay cut. And as a matter of fact, our good buddy Brady Henderson here, you were talking and discussing it. Tell the people, who took a pay cut?
Yeah, so this is Uchenna Nwosu, and he's coming off the two, injury-plagued seasons, and it seemed likely for a while that they were going to have to restructure his deal, rework his deal, in order to make it make sense for both sides. So my understanding, I got a hold of a copy of the contract, and he took what basically amounts to a $7 million pay, just a hair under $7 million pay cut. And it's so he had 2 years and I think $26.5 million left on his deal. The new deal is for 2 years and $19.51 million. So it's almost a $7 million pay cut. And the contract gives him the ability to make up, I think up to $5 million of that $7 million in incentives. So and again, it's sort of, some of these numbers depend on how exactly you characterize the contract, but the base value is 2 years, 19.51. He can make an additional $5 million on top of that in incentives and escalators. So the bottom line is it lowers the cap number by over $9 million, and it gives him the opportunity to make back a lot of what he's basically giving up in the pay cut.
I want to stay on this defensive side of the ball, Kat, and I'll tell you something that I'm noticing and I'm wondering, and I don't know this answer or anything. What do you think about Tariq Woolen when he out there playing? What's your thoughts? Did I catch you off guard? Why you smiling and laughing?
I'm always trying to be uplifting.
Look. Well, the reason why I'm asking this, and because we're coming up on that season, right?
Yeah.
We're coming up on time for him where the Seahawks are going to have a decision to make. And I'm bringing up him. He's either going to get paid or he's not. It's not rocket science. And I'll tell you something that I keep noticing and seeing.
Yeah.
The way I'm seeing the Seahawks bring in, as a matter of fact, they just signed a DB today. I keep seeing them do that. I wonder if Tariq Woolen is going to get paid here in Seattle.
For him, I must say I hope, but I don't think so. I don't think so. I don't think he's been consistent enough. That's like, I was like, and just thinking about how they did Baker last season, like he was here and then gone the next.
Right.
He's just not like, I don't have his stats pulled up for me to like give my proof, but like as watching him as a fan and seeing how Coach McDonald runs this team, he's very sneaky. Not sneaky, I would say, but it's very like, what you're seeing here is not what's getting processed back here. He has a good poker face, but I think he had a lot of missed tackles, if I'm remembering correctly.
Yeah,
he was
did.
missing tackles.
Yes,
like a
he
lot
did.
of what's it, arm tackles that wasn't doing nothing. Like, so yeah, I don't think so.
I would really like for Reek to bounce back, because I think you see everybody there. You see the talent.
Yeah,
You see
absolutely.
that there is
Absolutely.
extreme talent in Reek, and sometimes he does things and you're like, oh my goodness.
Facts.
But speaking of talent, I want to go back to Sam Darnold, and you have watched and seen the contract. Have you seen the full contract with Sam Darnold?
Have not seen Sam
Okay,
Darnold's
but
full
one of the
contract,
things that I have seen is because one of the questions I'm going to ask about one specific move that the Seahawks need to make. And by the way, if you're in the chat, you can go ahead and put that down. What is the one move that the Seahawks need to make? One move, not like address offensive line. No. Be specific as to what you would like to see them do. And it could be whether it's the draft or free agency. I saw in Sam Darnold's contract where the Seahawks, I think there's a guarantee they're on the hook for like $35 or $37 million.
37 and a half.
37, yeah, 37, meaning that's really a year contract if things, you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
What's the likelihood that the Seahawks say, okay, everything's cool, but still in this draft, we get a quarterback?
Yeah, I could definitely see it. Now, it's always, anytime you talk about the possibility of the Seahawks drafting a quarterback, it's hard not to remember the fact that in, 15 drafts under John Schneider, they've only taken 2 of them. Russell Wilson and Alex Magoo.
Oh, Russell and Alex Magoo.
Alex
okay.
Magoo was like a 7th-round pick in 2018 or something like that. So the point is they don't easily fall in love with quarterbacks in the draft. But if you're just looking at this year and if you're just looking at the commitment to Sam Darnold,
Yeah.
absolutely, that commitment should not preclude them from taking a quarterback. Maybe even on day 2. I probably don't see it in the first round.
Hey, y'all, I'm taking one first round.
Really?
I'm taking a quarterback. Absolutely.
Who's your guy?
And well, y'all know who I got my eyes on. Should I tell you? Should I tell you who I got my eyes on?
The chat want to know.
You know what I mean? Who won the national championship this year? Dude, them Buckeyes. The Ohio State. Who was the quarterback for that team? That boy can run. Guys love him. He's got the charisma. He reminds me of Matt Hasselbeck. I know y'all get tired of me talking about Matt Hasselbeck all the time, but y'all know how I feel about him. What's the chat saying right now? What's the chat saying?
I mean, we got a few questions if you want to go there.
Come on.
We have points too.
We got 6 minutes, so go ahead.
6 minutes. All right. Someone's asking, what do you think about Bobo playing on the team by Jacob or Lau? Do you think Bobo will get playing time?
Go ahead, Brady. You can start off with
Yeah,
that.
I think he's got a lot going for him in terms of he's he's a depth guy at receiver, so maybe he's your 4th receiver. But the fact that he plays special teams and he's a good special teams player, that's when you're not one of the top 3 receivers. You really got to make your mark on special teams in order to justify a spot on the roster, and he does that. So yeah, I think I think he'll be on the team, but it's probably going to be as the 4th or 5th receiver.
Okay.
By the way, I love Bobo, and I'm not just saying that. Watching him in practice, and you really see him, his technique, his routes are impeccable. Now, I know everybody talks about the speed, but whatever about the speed, because as you know, it doesn't matter. It matters about your release, how you're in and out of your breaks. Bobo is a very good wide receiver. I rock with him. What else we got in the chat?
Jacob Letho, your boy, he is agreeing with you about Will Howard from Ohio State. He was definitely thinking that. One guy named MV, he is kind of confused and he doesn't understand the trades for Sam Darnold, Cooper Kupp, Marquez Valdez Scantling is an upgrade over Geno, Tyler, and DK.
Okay. I can go first with that.
Yeah.
Let me tell you why it is an upgrade. It's an upgrade first of want to. Want to. You heard DK say it. Now, look, I'm mad love for DK. DK is a phenomenal wide receiver. DK was
Absolutely.
phenomenal. He was drafted here and everything. But he wasn't happy.
Yep.
So how can someone be successful? How can you be successful if you're not happy?
For sure.
Right? Geno Smith. He didn't want $35 million per season. Geno Smith, like Brady says, he wants a 4 in front of it. He doesn't want to be here.
He'd probably prefer a 5, but in terms of
Yeah, right. So, Brady, with that being said, I think, and I'm not just saying this, I'm being serious. I think the Seahawks are better off because the people that are here, they want to be here. Cooper Kupp decided Cooper Kupp turned down the Dallas Cowboys, where his boy, Junior Adams, the wide receiver coach that he had at Eastern Washington, is the wide receiver coach with the Dallas Cowboys. So that ought to let you know Cooper Kupp coming home was great.
Yeah, and I think it's easy to just look at it in terms of who's the better player, the guy they had or the guy they replaced him with. But that's one part of the conversation. I think the bigger picture is you got to factor in the contract situation too, and you also got to factor in the attitude. And so when you factor in those things, like, okay, DK Metcalf right now over the next 3 years is, assuming nothing catastrophic happens injury-wise, he's going to be a more productive player than Cooper Kupp, I would imagine.
Yes.
But the question is, it's not just about the production. It's, do you want DK Metcalf at $35 million a year when he's unhappy and you don't know if the new contract would make him happy? Or do you want Cooper Kupp at $15 million a year? If it even is 15, it might be closer to 13, 14, but a guy who clearly wants to be here. So, and I think, with Geno Smith, I don't think Sam Darnold is as talented as Geno Smith.
Neither do I.
I think Geno Smith is a more talented player than Sam Darnold. But Sam Darnold is 7 years younger. He has maybe more long-term upside because of that. He was going to be cheaper than what it would have cost to extend Geno. They also got a third-round pick out of that quarterback swap. And Sam Darnold, clearly wants to be here. And I think part of those moves, again, I think Plan A was to have both of those guys on the team. But part of the appeal in Plan B, I think, for them is that they have guys who are maybe going to be a little bit more happy to be here, a little bit more team-centric. And I think that is important when you want to empower your coach and give your coach sort of the ability to build the culture that he wants. Sometimes it's hard when you have guys who were with the previous regime. Some players, they transcend that. Jaron Reed transcends that. They wanted Jaron Reed back, and they signed him to a 2-year extent to a new 2-year deal. It doesn't always work that way, though. Sometimes it's hard for when you have guys who have been here as long as DK and Geno Smith had been here. Sometimes there's appeal in moving on from those guys in order to help reset a culture.
Brady Henderson, he covers the Seahawks for ESPN. Man,
you see what I did there, by the way? Reset. The reset.
Oh,
I actually didn't mean to do that.
We gotta bring him back now. We gotta bring him back. We gotta.
Brady. Look. I don't really give this to many people that cover the Seahawks or in sports media. I'm gonna tell you in your face and in front of everybody. I respect all the work you do. I respect it because it's honest. I respect it because you don't. I've known of situations where you just don't jump to be first. We are now in a society where you can just say whatever and it pops. I want to tell you that the work that you do is extremely well done, and I don't take that lightly.
That really means a lot to me. And I agree with what you say about how the tendency nowadays is to want to be first in lieu of being right sometimes. And so I appreciate that you notice that and you say that. And I appreciate you having me on here. I want to say something too. Like, you will always have like a very special place in my heart because I was working in this building, 10, 15 years ago and very early in my career. And I had no business being on anybody's radio show or anybody's podcast because I could hardly put two sentences together on over the airwaves. But you had me on, and that was big for me in terms of just getting those reps and building my confidence and getting my name out there. So I always have really admired you just for who you are and the way you've built up your career, but also especially for giving me a chance when, you and the late great John Clayton, the professor.
Come on.
You were two people who had me on their shows when I really didn't have any business being on anybody's shows. So
Appreciate
thank you,
brother. Brady Henderson, everybody. Kat, always love and respect you, girl. Appreciate you being with me.
Thank you, man.
And we're going to do this again next week. It'll be opening day next Thursday for those Seattle Mariners. But one of the things I'll leave you with is this. You heard Brady Henderson talk about it, so I'll remind you and tell you again. When you're thinking about that player on your favorite football team, hopefully it's the Seahawks, remember it comes down to three things. It comes down to talent on the field. It comes down to culture and chemistry inside of the locker room. and it also comes down to contract, right? Those three things have to make sense. And the team in the NFL that does it the best, well, they'll be the Super Bowl champion, right? Every year, there's 31 teams that don't win the Super Bowl, period, point blank. Kansas City Chiefs did not win the Super Bowl last season. So I'm out of here. Paul, thank you for all you do, brother. My man Paul Holden is, of course, the engineer doing his thing. Hey, we'll do this again next time. Appreciate you rocking with me. Love you for that. And as always, be kind.